So good morning. Welcome to the Zoom worship service of First Church Unitarian in Littleton, although many of us are not in Littleton at the moment. And we are all online together because of the storm, of course, and the timing. And I think we made the right call. So I hope you will enjoy being on the cozy Zoom worship service together. In the past, when we had to do this all the time, with COVID, it wasn't fun, but I think now the occasional snow day on Zoom can be cozy. So I hope you enjoy that, take advantage of that, um, have a beverage with you. You don't have to worry about spilling it on the sanctuary floor. Be comfortable and let's have a nice, warm Zoom worship service together. I'm so glad that you're with us. And if this is your first time worshiping with us on Zoom, I hope you enjoy it. So I'm going to turn it right over to Cindy for Community Matters.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cindy Malley, and I am a member of your executive team, serving in my final few months as one of your deacons. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a middle-aged white woman with short brown hair and glasses. This is the second week in a row where I am your welcomer, and the second week in a row where we are fully virtual due to snow. So if you're starting to wonder if I might be bad luck, so am I. But good news, I am not the welcomer next week, so we should be good. Speaking of next Sunday, I wanted to lift up that we will be having a guest worship leader, Heather Vickery from Pink Haven, an organization that is partnered with the UUA and the UUSC, that's the Unitarian Universalist Association, and the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. And this group is committed to trans liberation and joy. I hope that you will come and attend worship with us next Sunday. I would also like to remind you to save the date of March 9th for our stewardship celebratory luncheon. And there's still time to get in your photos and videos. You can find a link to that in your Community Matters, which is also where you should be looking for all your other announcements. And please, like Mike mentioned right before we started, remain muted unless you are asked to unmute. Thank you very much, and welcome to church.
you're traveling through another dimension. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. A journey into a wondrous land whose boundaries are that of imagination. You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. There's a fifth dimension beyond that which is known to humans. It's a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It's the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of one's fears and the summit of one's knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination. It's an area which we call Zoom Church. The adapted words of the late, great Rod Serling, who was, in fact, a Unitarian Universalist. Let us worship. I'd like to invite Kris to light our chalice this morning.
Come on, it's open this morning. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Thank you, Kris. It's our time for all ages. I invite Thea to share today's story.
Today's story is called When Things Aren't Going Right, Go Left, written by Marc Colagiovanni and illustrated by Peter H. Reynolds. You guys have the pictures? Huh. Here we go. Okay. One day, for no particular reason, nothing was going right. Absolutely, positively, nothing was going right. So I decided to go left. The first thing I did, I left my worries behind. Yep, I left them right there on the ground. They looked up at me and wondered, where are you going? But I just smiled and waved goodbye. Wait, they hollered, come back, what will happen to us? I simply shrugged my shoulders. You'll be fine. As I walked away, I thought, did I make the right choice? Should I go back and get them? Doubts crept in. So you know what I did? I left behind my doubts. Yep, I left them right there on the ground. They bellowed, you're making a mistake! But I just gazed at the sky. They questioned, are you sure you're making the right decision? Absolutely, I declared. With my worries and doubts left behind, I could finally think clearly. I forged on until I came to a pool and a diving board I remembered all too well. The last time I tried to dive off that diving board, I splatted on my back. Ah, I remember the pain and how scared I was. I started thinking, maybe I shouldn't try it again. So you know what I did? I left my fears. Yep, I left them right there on the ground. They screamed, don't do it! I stood up straight, shoulders back, hands pressed above my head. Stop! They cried, but I simply turned and gave them a wink. I leapt. Splat. On my back once again. Oh, that stings. I thought to myself, this is impossible. It can't be done. So you know what I did? I left behind my frustrations. Yep, I left them right there on the ground. They yelled, you can't do it. Again, I stood up straight, shoulders back, hands pressed above my head. They laughed. Give up already. I whispered to myself, no way, never. I leaped, feet together, toes pointed, legs straight. Perfect, I did it. I started to realize the more the more right, I'm sorry. I started to realize the more left I went, the more right I felt. So you know what I did? Yep, I kept going left. And before you knew it, everything was going right. As I walked home, I glanced at the ground and I noticed something I did not expect. My frustrations were a lot smaller. My fears a lot quieter. My doubts a lot calmer. My worries practically gone. So I decided to pick them up, back up. And you know what? They felt lighter now. And they weren't so hard to handle anymore. And I realized it's okay to have them with me so long as I keep an eye on them. And made sure that they didn't get too big or too loud or too overwhelming. But if they did, and I felt like nothing was going right, then I'd simply go left. When life burdens start to feel too heavy, don't be afraid to put them down for a while. And I think this is true for us right now in these times. Don't carry more than you can handle. Thank you.
Thank you, choir. The choir actually made that for us special on Thursday evening, anticipating that we might be virtual today. So thank you so much, Molly and choir, for doing that. Really appreciate the ministry and gift of your music. Now we come to the time for our offering. And as you know, we are a self-supporting congregation. We rely on the generosity of members and friends to do our ministries together in the church and also out in the world. And we're happy to do it because we're happy together. So I want to ask you today, if you get the chance, you could go to our website at some point, fculittle.org, and click on the yellow donate button in the right corner, and it would guide you through the process there. Or you could always send in a check to First Church Unitarian, 19 Foster Street, Littleton, Massachusetts, 01460. Attention, Assistant Treasurer. If you don't want to give an offering, you could also consider this a nudge to send in a pledge payment if you're overdue like I am, so I'll nudge myself. This morning's offering will now be given and received in grateful appreciation. A community response. May we be transformed by our giving, and may the world be transformed by our gifts. And thank you, Molly, for making the special musical videos for us today. Very appreciated. So please join me, if you would, in the spirit of meditation or prayer. Once again, we have come together in love and trust, sharing those cares dearest to us with this gathered beloved community. Let us hold in our thoughts and our prayers all of those joys, concerns, and sorrows spoken aloud, as well as those that remain unspoken, as we share together in a time of sacred silence. Blessed be, and amen. Not long ago, I was watching episodes of the classic PBS series Cosmos with Carl Sagan from way back in 1980. In one episode, Sagan talks about dimensions. He uses the classic book Flatland, written by Edwin Abbott in Victorian England. And I'm going to try to summarize the best I can the way Sagan did. So let me change my background. Okay. Imagine that we are perfectly flat. We have side to side and forward and backward. Imagine that we live in a world of rectangles and circles and triangles, creatures that have width and length, but no height. We've never heard of up-down. One day, a strange three-dimensional character visits Flatland. The visitor sees Flatland from above and sees, as Sagan puts it, a nice congenial-looking square. The orange booms down from above. Hello, I'm a visitor from the third dimension. Now, the two-dimensional square hears the voice, but it sees nothing. It can't see up. It doesn't have a way to see up. In fact, from the square's perspective, the voice he hears is coming from within. Next, the orange decides to enter Flatland and enter that flat plane. Now, only a cross-section of the orange can be seen by the square. Only the orange's points of contact as it comes through the flat plane appear to the square. And then the cross sections of the orange are in the plane of Flatland, one after the other. So from the perspective of the square, a set of objects mysteriously appears from nowhere and changes shape dramatically. The square doesn't know what's going on. Then the orange gets frustrated and gives the square a brand new experience. The orange knocks the square up into the third dimension. At first, the square is totally baffled. The square doesn't understand it at all. What is the square even seeing? Eventually, the square realizes what it's seeing. It's seeing Flatland, but it's seeing inside closed rooms. It's seeing inside the shapes themselves, the whole shape, not just the edges of it. The square floats back down to Flatland, back to the world of two dimensions. From the perspective of the other Flatlanders, the square reappeared from nowhere. The square has to explain that it came from some mystical dimension called up. The other Flatlanders ask to see it, but the square can't show them up. The square can't even point to up. The square has left the comfort zone of Flatland and found the magical world of up. But sometimes it's hard to come back and tell the others what you've learned. Now, Carl Sagan's point in Cosmos was that there might be more than just three dimensions, the three dimensions that we experience. But being three-dimensional creatures, we're trapped in a world of 3D. We can't even imagine a fourth spatial dimension. Not really. We can't point to it any more than Flatlanders can point at up. In fact, though, according to string theory, which is pretty well accepted science, according to string theory, there are several other dimensions, 11 of them, in fact. But we can't really picture them in our 3D world. We can, though, think about them without seeing them. We can imagine dimensions unknown to us, unexperienced by our 3D limitations. With enough scientific experimentation, we can begin to deduce extra dimensions, as the string theorists have done. There's a real magic to me in science and in scientific imagination. I can only envy those with the brilliant scientific minds that can figure these things out, who can deduce things that seem just like magic to me, or even kind of scary and unknown sometimes. They can deduce these things without using their senses. They just have to use their big brains and their logic and leave the comfort zone of old ideas. They have to venture into the scary world of new ideas that might seem incredible, and they might be risking ridicule or worse. Carl Sagan's Cosmos did nothing if not to remind us that we are living in an amazing universe. And the Earth itself is amazing, our three-dimensional limitations notwithstanding. As Sagan put it, we're living in an exotic, inhabited world in the vastness of space. The trick to overcoming human limitations is to explore radically new ideas, to think outside of the box, or to think outside of our own 3D land. With intelligence and a little courage, you can leave the comfort zone of old ideas about our world and about your own world. Of course, as the new host of Cosmos, Neil deGrasse Tyson, has pointed out, it's not entirely true that we're stuck thinking in 3 dimensions. After all, suppose I say to you, let's meet at the Lowell Justice Center at 370 Jackson Street in Lowell on the 5th floor. What do you say? Do you say, okay, see you there, and walk away? No, you say, okay, when? I've given you the latitude and the longitude with a street address, and I've given you the altitude by telling you which floor. But then there's that weird 4th dimension of time. You need that extra coordinate in 3D land to meet up with someone. In general, I think most of us think of time as a very strange coordinate because it's different from the 3 spatial dimensions of left, right, front, back, up, and down. Or is it different? After all, as Einstein reminded us, it's really space-time, not space. Some physicists think that perhaps time is a kind of 4th spatial dimension, actually. Only we don't perceive it that way because we're inhabitants of 3D land. And that time is what allows us to move around in 3D land. Without time, you'd be stuck where you are right now in your spot of latitude and longitude and altitude. You'd be stuck there. Without the dimension of time, you'd be trapped. And yet, in another sense, time isn't freeing us. In another sense, we're all prisoners of time. As Neil deGrasse Tyson also puts it, we are prisoners of the present in perpetual transition from an inaccessible past to an unknowable future. Now, this is all very fascinating, I hope you're saying to yourselves, but what does it have to do with practical, real-world matters? Whether or not there are multiple dimensions, where is the dimension where we didn't elect a tyrant? I want to go to that dimension. Whether time is spatial or not, or whatever the heck time is, when do we get the fascists out of power? I hear you. I feel you. But doesn't it seem sometimes like we need to find an escape? If not from 3D land, doesn't it seem like we need to find an escape from thinking inside the same old boxes? Those old boxes haven't always been working very well for us. They haven't been working very well in the United States political system for some time now. What other boxes aren't working well? For us, for you personally? Are you trapping yourself with your old idea and your old ideas about the way things are? There are times when we have to jump in with the boxes that we do know, because the situation could be urgent and harm could be imminent. And in those situations, you end up relying on the same old boxes, assuming that they have served us well in the past. So I donate to the ACLU, for instance, because I know that the way our country operates, sometimes suing and seeking an injunction can really help to buy some time. It has proven to be pretty effective. And if any of you are working on something in your own personal life, sometimes I'm sure you have a go-to that helps you pretty effectively. And that's great. And by all means, go to your go-to if it's working for you. If nothing else, it buys you time. It lets us live to fight another day. But how do we get to new solutions, maybe even radically new ones? So I'm going to try to share another picture with you. Okay. I shared this picture with you once before. For a while, we were seeing it all over the social media, but that was a while ago. When you get outside of your comfort zone, that's where the magic happens. Every time you do something that's entirely outside of your comfort zone, you enter effectively a new dimension. You're leaving your cozy, safe, but limited flatland or 3D land and venturing into new dimensions. But rarely is there a great reward in life without some risk. When you do something completely new for you, you look back on your old world and sometimes you see things from a whole new perspective that can be quite enlightening. I think one of the things that can really help us in this difficult time in our country is to meet new people and make new alliances. One of the fastest ways that brilliant ideas are born is through the mixing of people and cultures. Think about all the amazing cultures and societies that were formed right around the Mediterranean Sea, when you had the Greeks and the Phoenicians and the Mesopotamians and the Egyptians and the Persians. They were far enough apart to have created their own civilizations and ways, but close enough that they eventually were able to find each other and share ideas and inventions. And for quite a while, the Mediterranean was where civilization was really at. And we can do that in our own way locally. There are so many local groups that we would do well to get to know. This past Friday night, we had a super fun Valentine's Day karaoke party at FCU downstairs in the dining room. It was my very first time trying karaoke, and I had a blast. And I learned some things in the process. To share just a couple, I always thought that karaoke would be this spectacle of haves and have-nots. People who have incredible voices and sound amazing getting up there, and then the have-nots who don't sing that well and look silly up there. And I always imagined it would be kind of depressing, for lack of a better word. And of course, I'm speaking as a have-not in this case. But really, it's not true. It's not depressing at all. If anything, karaoke is, to my surprise, a kind of great equalizer, because at the end of the day, we all look silly up there, no matter how well we sing. You look a little goofy staring at a screen of lyrics and not knowing really what to do with your body while you're singing. And I don't think it's possible to sound amazing singing karaoke, no matter who you are, because singing to canned music isn't really artistically compelling. And I don't think it's really possible to sound horrible up there exactly, because the canned music is playing after all, and that's a big part of what everyone is hearing, and everyone is just there to laugh and have a good time. And so now I get, finally, by trying it, why people enjoy it so much, not just the watching others, but the actual doing it, whether you sing well or not. Can only know by trying sometimes. But the other great thing was some new folks were there participating. Some folks who are not FCUers came, some young parents with kids. And yes, they were invited by FCUers, but they were brave enough to come. And I think to a person, they had a really great time. You could see that it's a very cool way for parents and kids to bond, getting up there and singing together. As the choir's anthem reminded us today, when we are singing, we are bound together. And we met some new people and they met us. And I don't know that any of them will become FCUers. After all, I know at least one of those family has their own congregation already, and that's great. But that's not the point that we at FCU meet new folks so that they join us. It really doesn't matter. We meet them, we meet kindred spirits. The mothers who joined us at karaoke were local activists. And I know we're going to cross paths again out there, fighting the good fight. And when we see each other, there will be that much more trust. There will be a pretty easy bond, I think, because we shared a night of karaoke. And they'll know things that we don't about activism and all kinds of things. And we might have a few tricks up our sleeves that they don't. And that's beautiful. This is the time to make new acquaintances, even friends. This is the time to make new alliances with other people and organizations. This is the time to get out there and meet others. And it doesn't have to be painful at all. It can be as fun as a night of karaoke. So let's keep doing that. Let's keep thinking of fun ways to invite others into our world. And let's accept and even seek out invitations to visit the worlds of like-minded others. This is the time to get out of our boxes, out of our limited dimensions and limited ways of thinking and being. There is more out there. There's more love out there. Let's keep on till we find it. Blessed be, and amen. For our closing words, as is the tradition for Zoom worship, I invite you to put up your hands and just feel the energy between us, even though we are far apart. Friends, you don't have to be stuck in any box. You don't have to be stuck in your Zoom box or any other box that you found yourself in your life. And we at FCU don't need to be stuck in boxes either. It just takes the imagination and the courage to get outside of the comfort zone, to learn from others, to explore strange new worlds, to find unknown dimensions. And we will be happy together and have fun doing it. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. Please remain seated for our postlude.